Powerful message on the identity of Jesus Christ. Vertical bar C. S. Lewis. Are you looking for a sign from heaven? A clear, undeniable proof that Jesus is real? Something spectacular to settle the questions in your heart? Then hear this. You don't have to look up to the sky or search the depths of the earth, because Jesus already said it plainly. I am the sign, not a miracle, not a symbol, but a person. When you are confronted with him, what is your reaction? Some run, some laugh, some ignore, but others, like Saul on the road to Damascus, fall to their knees and ask, "Who art thou, Lord?" That question is not just a moment in Scripture. It is echoing in your soul right now, wherever you are, whatever you've done. If you're honest with yourself, you've heard it. Maybe you've stood in the dark of night, and something deeper than life itself whispered to you, calling you, stirring you, waiting for your answer. You cannot escape him. Jesus is not a relic of history. He is present in your moment, in your pain, in your longing. He is there in the memories you carry, the questions you can't shake, the thirst you can't explain. I'm not asking if you go to church. I'm not asking what religion you claim. I'm asking you one question. When you face Jesus, how will you respond? What happens in your heart when you hear his name? Some people feel tension. Some want to change the subject. Some break down in tears. That is not how we react to a myth. That is how we respond to a living truth, like sunlight stings your eyes. His presence pierces your soul. And today, I want to ask you, personally, directly, without excuse or delay, who is Jesus to you? Not to your family, not to your pastor, not to a textbook, but to you. Let your heart speak. This is not a theory. This is your life. This is your soul. And it demands an answer, not someday, not when you feel ready, but right now. You may think you can ignore him, that you can keep your life moving forward without ever answering the question. But let me ask you something personal. Have you ever wondered why Jesus keeps showing up? Why, even when you try to move on, his name comes back to you in conversations, in movies, in songs, even in your own thoughts? You see, we live in a world that tries so hard to erase him. We push him out of classrooms, out of governments, out of daily life. But somehow, he never leaves. He's in the headlines. He's in the arguments. He's in the silence. After a long day, you cannot escape him, because he is not just a figure of history. He is the living truth. And the more you run, the more you feel him drawing near. Now let me ask you, when was the last time you paused and faced that presence instead of avoiding it? When was the last time you looked into the question not with fear, but with hunger? Not with doubt, but with hope? I believe if you've made it this far in the message, it's because deep down, something inside of you is stirring. Something wants to believe that there is more to life than pain, more than the past, more than survival. That something is your soul responding to the voice of the one who made you. And if you're feeling that right now, I want to know, because I don't want to speak into silence. I want to speak to hearts that are waking up Would you let me know you're here? If you're feeling something move inside your spirit, if you're ready to stop running and start seeking, I invite you to comment right now. Just say, I'm ready, or even simply comment the number 1. That's all it takes to say, I hear this, I feel this, and I'm choosing to respond. Your comment means more than you know. It tells me you're not numb. It tells me you want change. And it reminds me I'm not speaking alone. Thank you for that. Thank you for your courage. And thank you for showing up. Because this journey, this moment, it's not about just hearing a message. It's about letting truth call you by name. And you, my friend, are being called. So how will you answer? Jesus was a man. He walked on dusty roads, touched lepers, sat with outcasts, wept at tombs, and broke bread with those the world rejected. He grew tired. He grew thirsty. He was tempted, but there is something terrifyingly unique about him. He never sinned, not once. He stood before a hostile crowd and said, "Which of you convicts me of sin?" And no one answered. Not one could speak. Imagine standing in front of your own neighborhood and saying that. They would laugh. They would remember. But with Jesus, there was silence. A holy, heavy silence. Because they knew he was not just another man. He was different. Not only did he live perfectly, he claimed something no one else in human history dared to declare with such certainty. He said, I am God, not a messenger of God, not a prophet pointing the way. He said, before Abraham was, I am. He used the very name spoken to Moses from the burning bush, and suddenly, you are no longer dealing with a good teacher. You are confronting God in flesh. This is what makes people nervous. This is what stirs hatred and awe in the same breath, because if he is who he claimed to be, then we are not in charge of our lives. We do not get to define truth. We do not get to live on our own terms. That is why so many try to reduce Jesus to a myth, a symbol, a good man with a message of love. But he did not leave that option open to us. He did not come to be liked. He came to rule. He came to redeem. He came to die. And you must decide not if you like him, but if you believe him. You can admire his teachings. You can quote his words. But until you surrender to who he is, you have not truly met him. The real Jesus does not just inspire, it disrupts. He breaks our illusions. He exposes our pride. And then, with unspeakable grace, he invites us to follow him anyway. So let me ask you, can you look at your life and say with certainty that he is just another man? Or is there something about him that haunts you, that stirs something deep, something trembling, something holy? That is not emotion. That is truth pulling you closer. No one ever spoke like Jesus. His words did not just touch the surface. They went straight to the heart. He did not come to teach rules. He came to reveal the motives behind them. When the law said, do not kill, he said, if you hate your brother, you are already guilty. When the law said, do not commit adultery, He said, if you look with lust, you have already crossed the line. He took the moral standard and lifted it beyond action into the unseen world of thoughts and intentions. That is why people were either drawn to him or furious with him. He spoke with authority no man had, not because he learned from books, but because he wrote the truth into the soul of creation. I once met a young man after a crusade who said, when Jesus spoke, I felt like he was speaking directly to me, like he saw everything I was hiding. That is exactly what the gospel does. It does not flatter. It confronts, and then it offers hope. Jesus said forgive, not just one, but 70 times 7. He said turn the other cheek. He said love your enemies. Have you ever tried that? It is not weakness. It is the greatest strength a man can show. It is the power to resist revenge, the courage to choose grace. And when Jesus spoke these things, he lived them. He did not only preach mercy, he bled for it. He did not only say, love your enemies, he died for them. You see, these are not just spiritual ideas. They are reality. They are the path to life. And I wonder, as you listen to this, what is stirring in you? Are you only hearing words, or is something inside of you burning with recognition, with longing? If you hear it, if something inside you whispers, this is true, then I want to know you are listening. Comment now and simply say, I'm ready. Or even just type the number 1. Let it be a moment where you say, I am not just a watcher. I am someone who is hearing from God. Because when Jesus speaks, it is not like any voice you have heard. It is personal. It is piercing. And it is calling your name. Are you listening? They stripped him of his robe. They tied him to a post and took long leather straps weighted with sharp pieces of metal and bone and tore into his back again and again until his body trembled and his skin was torn. They mocked him. They pressed a crown of thorns into his head until blood streamed down his face. They spat on him and called him names. Then they led him through the streets like a criminal while the crowd watched in silence or in scorn. And still, he said nothing, not one word of anger, not one cry for revenge. They nailed his hands and feet to a rough wooden cross. The sky grew dark. The earth shook. And in that unbearable pain, do you know what he said? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. You tell me, is that the response of a madman? Is that how an ordinary man dies? He could have called down legions of angels. He could have ended it all with a single word. But he stayed. He stayed on that cross for you, for me, for the very people who hated him. When he cried out, "It is finished," it was not a cry of defeat. It was the shout of victory. The work of redemption was done. The path for your forgiveness was opened. The debt for your sin was paid in full. And in that moment, he was thinking of you. That is not an idea. That is not a symbol. That is love in its most raw and powerful form. The kind of love that does not wait for you to be worthy. The kind of love that reaches into your shame and says, I choose you. He bore the punishment you deserved. Not to make you feel guilty, but to set you free. And as he gave up his spirit, he was already seeing what would come. Lives transformed, hearts awakened, a people made new by grace. That cross was not an ending, it was the beginning of everything. The day heaven opened its arms wide and said, "Come home." So if you have ever wondered if anyone could truly love you as you are, look at the cross. That is where the question ends. They thought it was over. They sealed the tomb. They placed guards to keep it shut, but death could not hold him. On the third day, the stone was rolled away, not to let him out, but to let the world see he was no longer there. Jesus had risen, and that changes everything. If he stayed in the grave, then all of this is empty. But if he is alive, then every word he spoke is true. Every promise stands, and every person who calls on his name can find new life. The resurrection is not a story we tell to feel better. It is the very foundation of our faith. Without it, there is no gospel. With it, there is no limit. He did not rise to return to comfort. He rose to reign, and he is not a distant king. He is near. He is calling. I remember a man who once led a violent movement filled with anger and hatred. He believed power came through force, but then he met Jesus. He said all the hate drained from his heart and was replaced with something he never knew before: peace. The kind that does not come from philosophy or willpower. The kind that only comes when the one who conquered death walks into your life and says, "You are mine." The resurrection means your shame is not final. Your failure is not the end. Your brokenness is not permanent. Because Jesus did not just rise from the dead. He rose for you. He saw your face. He knew your name. And he chose to carry you out of the grave of your past. That is not religion. That is rescue. You may carry pain no one sees. You may fight battles no one understands, but the same power that raised Christ from the dead is reaching for you, not because you earned it, but because he wants you. So I ask you to see this with new eye, not as a tradition, not as a tale, but as the greatest truth this world has ever known. He is alive. And because he lives, you can live too, not just exist, but be made new, fully known, fully forgiven, and fully free. That is the power of the resurrection. That is the invitation in front of you now. I want to ask you something very personal. What would it take for you to believe that change is possible? Not just surface change, not behavior or appearance, but something deeper, something that touches the soul. Do you believe a person can be made completely new, not by effort or therapy, but by an encounter with the living Jesus? I once met a man whose life was built on rage. He believed strength came from fear, that power came from violence. He tried to change the world through anger, but when he met Jesus, something broke. The hate that fueled him was replaced by a peace he could not explain, and he said these words, "I thought I knew power, but real power is what Jesus did in my heart." That is the story of thousands. People who carried guilt like a weight on their chest. People who tried to run from who they had become. But when Jesus stepped in, everything shifted. The patterns broke. The chains fell. The voice of shame was silenced. You see, when Jesus enters your life, he does not just rearrange the furniture. He builds a new house. He does not just fix old wounds. He gives you a new heart. And that is not fantasy. That is happening all around the world, every day, quietly, powerfully. Lives are being restored. So I wonder, is there a part of you that wants that kind of change? Have you reached the point where you are done pretending, where you are tired of running, where you are finally willing to say, I need something more? Because if you are there, I want to know, not for numbers, not for clicks, but because it tells me I am not speaking alone. It tells me someone is listening with their heart open, and that means more than you know. If you feel something stirring, if you feel like this message is not just for someone else, but for you, would you let me know? Just comment, I'm ready. Or even just the number 1, that's all. That simple response tells me you are not numb, you are not closed off. You are alive, and you are willing to take one step. You may not have all the answers. You may still have questions. But if your heart is leaning forward, even just a little, that is enough. Because Jesus does not require perfection. He just asks for your yes. And I want to thank you for listening, for being here, for letting this moment matter. Because sometimes one comment becomes the first word in a new story. And I believe that story can begin right now. If Jesus is not who he claimed to be, then none of this matters. But if he is, then nothing else matters more. You can walk away from this message and pretend it was just another video, or you can face the question that follows you in every quiet moment. Who is Jesus to you? That is the question eternity hinges on. Not what church you go to, not what good deeds you have done, not how much Bible you know, but whether you have truly met the living Christ. Because the real Jesus does not leave you neutral. He compels a decision. It demands a response. And the cost of ignoring him is not measured in missed opportunities. It is measured in lost souls. The tragedy today is not that people are rejecting Jesus. It is that they are living as if he is irrelevant, as if the cross was a story and not a sacrifice, as if the empty tomb was a myth and not a miracle, as if grace was a theory and not a lifeline. I have seen lives transformed in the darkest prisons. I have seen peace fall on men who were ready to end it all. I have seen women find healing after years of silence and shame, and every one of them said the same thing. Jesus met me where no one else could reach. He did not come for the perfect. He came for the broken. And maybe that is where you find yourself right now. Not strong, not proud, just tired. Tired of trying to hold it together. Tired of pretending you are fine. Tired of wondering if anyone truly sees you. Let me tell you this. Jesus sees you fully, clearly, lovingly, and still it chooses you. The question now is not whether he is ready. The question is whether you are. Are you willing to surrender? Are you willing to trade control for peace, pride for grace, fear for faith? Because the arms that stretched wide on the cross are still open. The invitation is still yours. And one day, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. But today, you have the chance to bow by choice, not by force, to receive Him as Savior, not face Him as Judge. So what will you do? I urge you, do not silence the voice speaking to your heart. Do not walk away from the love that is reaching out to you. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. And in the next video, I want to show you what happens when you say yes to Jesus, not in theory, not in religion, but in power, in freedom, in a new life that cannot be explained but must be experienced. Are you ready to discover what comes next?